Hello there! It's Friday, which means it's time once again for the best movie podcast ever, the only movie podcast to offer objective and hyperbole-free discussion of every movie in the known universe. I am your host, the podcaster with no name, Konrad. With me as always... Oh wait, hold on, I need to remember this line now because it's from a movie I saw a day ago. Memory is the boat that sails against its current, and he is the oarsman. It's Anthony James. There we go.
Well, I was going to say, you're waiting for a train. Oh no, hang on. Memory is a boat.
Yeah. You're going on a journey. Yeah. That's like the only line I remembered from this movie, to be honest, which we'll get into a bit later. Anthony, how are you doing?
I'm actually doing all right, to be honest with you. I just started back at the old work today, so I'm no longer a layabout in the summer. So the teacher in the summer, layabout. To be honest with you, I wasn't a layabout. I've mentioned before I was doing my master's essay, but for the purposes of this joke, I was a layabout, and now I'm back, Konrad.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're a teacher, so, you know, you only... to quote the great Kevin Nash, you only enjoy working 9 months out of the year. I've always loved that Kevin Nash, for some reason, enjoys making fun of teachers. I don't understand.
I would imagine most wrestlers do, aren't they? All like, you know,
yeah, they work like 400.
Southerners.
Yes, yeah, they're all. Yeah, this is like the big thing with why like Undertaker never did like social media. When he was an active wrestler, and then when he retired, he started being, you know, on lots of interviews and stuff, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's right, he's like a 60-year-old dude from Texas."
At least Glenn Jacobs Kane has the wit to keep his local. You know,
yeah,
he's
exactly.
the mayor of a local little town, and he doesn't really speak about stuff outside that. No. Although Donnie starts, link it below if he has. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, like let's someone give a brief review of how Glenn Jacobs has done as a mayor of a small town. Not that I would do any better, to be honest. I'd be less racist. I'll say that much. This week on the Best Movie Podcast Ever, we are going to spend a little while talking about Sonny Chiba, who sadly passed away this last week. We're going to talk about Jennifer Hudson's opinion of the Cats movie, which I don't actually know if you've seen, but I definitely have. I've got a good story about seeing it, which we'll get into.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I would say the word is avoided it.
Okay, well, I didn't for reasons that will become obvious, and we'll have a chat about that in a moment. And a non-English language Back to the Future this week. That's all the clues I'm giving you. And obviously, Lisa... I say obviously, I haven't actually said what the name of the film is yet. Lisa Joy is dipping her toes into neo-noir. That's all I'm going to say for the time being. So, I reckon, let's talk about some gosh darn movies.
Let's do it.
Movies, we're here to talk about them. First off, to quote True Romance, which I don't think you've seen, but it's a good quote anyway. He ain't so much a good guy as he's just a bad motherfucker. That's Sonny Chiba that we're talking about here. He's Christian Slater's character's favourite martial artist in the movie True Romance. I wouldn't say he's my favourite martial artist, but he's in the top 3.
Top 3? Oh.
Yeah, maybe. Like it's a hard.
What about Jar? Is he above Jar?
He's above Jar. Yeah, I think it's a hard. Like Jackie Chan's definitely in my top 3, and I would probably. Joe Taslim's very good. We'll get into it. But so anyway, like Sonny Chiba, star of lots and lots of very, very good martial arts movies for the last. I mean, it's been. Gosh, he probably started in the 60s, I think. So it's been like 50 years of him just appearing in stuff that appears very grindhousey to like modern audiences, but which was actually pretty influential at the time it was made. He sadly passed away. I believe I don't want to say something that's incorrect here, but I believe I read it was something to do with COVID. But either way, very sad. He passed away in his 80s. Now, we've just had... I'm not going to put you on blast here, Anthony. This is not the intention of this, but I have spent most of this week being very angry at the internet with all the articles that were like, star of Kill Bill. And I was like, fuck off. He was in so many things apart from Kill Bill. That's not the thing he's most famous for. But I will concede... Tokyo
Drift, probably the number one,
or Tokyo Drift for that matter. But obviously, you know, I think a lot of Western audiences were probably introduced to him as Hattori Hanzo, the master swordsman in Kill Bill, which, to be fair, was a very fun role. It was a cameo for him, but I think he did a really good job. Had a lot of put a lot of personality into the role, and as you've said, he was the boss. I believe, was it Kamata, the name of the boss in Tokyo Drift?
I can't remember.
I think it's named like Kamata, but I mean that was again one of those roles where like he sort of turns up 2/3 of the way through the movie, and it was very much for me like a holy shit, that's Sonny Chiba moment, because up until that point it's the other dude who's kind of like the the day-to-day bad guy in Tokyo Drift, the one who's you don't see Sonny Chiba get behind the wheel of a Toyota in that movie, or whatever they're driving.
They're driving all sorts of things, let's be honest.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, so he's very famous for those. He was probably, if you're going to say the thing that he is most famous for among people who actually know him, it would be the movie The Street Fighter and its sequels, which is a very good movie and well worth checking out. Was
he just in martial arts stuff, or was he also in samurai stuff?
He was in some period things. So he actually played, funnily enough, he played the character Hattori Hanzo earlier in his career. In a TV period show called Shadow Warriors, which I've never actually seen. But he played, when he was playing Hattori Hanzo that time, he played them as a truer to life version of the character in that he was a ninja. Whereas like Hattori Hanzo in Kill Bill, I don't think it's ever implied that he's a ninja, which is what the real Hattori Hanzo, if he did exist, was. Just a swordsman. Just a damn good swordsman. But I mean, Sonny Chiba, his influence extends beyond his movies. He inspired lots of characters in popular media, famously characters like Ryu in Street Fighter. Obviously, the name of the game, Street Fighter, comes from his movies as well. A massively influential actor, and I really heartily recommend that anyone who hasn't caught his stuff go and find it, because he was a brilliant martial artist and a great leading man, really up there with your Bruce Lees and your Jackie Chans as far as like the massive stars of martial arts films go.
Really interesting to me. He's one of the, like, if you look at the old Western stars from American cinema, you look back in like the 70s and the 60s, they did like 5 films a year or something.
Yeah.
And he's the same here. I'm looking at his, I haven't seen much of his stuff, I'm going to be honest with you, but I'm looking at his things here, and it was absolutely prolific. He was doing like 8 films a year in the 70s.
Yeah, well, I mean, it does help when... No, I'm not going to cast aspersions about him because a lot of those movies are very good, but it does help when all the movies you're making are basically the same film, as it was true with the westerns. Like Yul Brynner would finish filming one western and he literally wouldn't change his costume. He'd just rock up onto the next set and be like, "I'm ready." And John Wayne as well. God, like John Wayne, the only time he ever changed his costume was to play a problematic Genghis Khan. Which the less said of that, the better. But yeah, so Sonny Chiba, his stuff is actually quite hard to find, certainly in the UK. There is, I believe, Sister of Street Fighter is available on Arrow, which I was looking for to be like, I should get all the Street Fighter movies. But hopefully, maybe posthumously, someone will pick up the rights to it and do a lovely Blu-ray pressing of those, because more people should see them. But yeah, so Sonny Chiba, worth checking his stuff out.
Not awesome that he passed away. That's very, very sad. But I think it's cool that he has so much stuff to remember,
Yeah, absolutely. And now going from someone that I very much like and whose films I love to Jennifer Hudson talking about how she likes cats unironically. Now you...
Oh my god, I really thought this was going to go the other way.
No, she likes cats.
This is how bad the film was. It makes news that one of the cast members likes it.
Yeah, so Jennifer Hudson was in... I can't actually remember why she was doing interviews this week, or why she wanted to conjure up the presumably painful memory of starring in the movie Cats. But she said, it's unfortunate that it was misunderstood. Now, I've got some issues with that. I want to start this off by saying, just to be clear, you never saw this movie, Anthony?
No.
We're right in saying that. I went to see this movie. This is a sign of how lonely and pathetic my life is at times. I got home for the holidays in 2019. I think this came out. Christmas 2019.
I think so, yes.
So I got home for the holidays, and my family do a gathering with 2 other families on Christmas Eve. But it's mainly just my parents and the parents of these other 2 families getting drunk and having snacks. And they invited me to come, and I was like, no, that sounds awful. Like, I don't want to spend my Christmas Eve with a bunch of people in their 60s getting drunk. So I opted instead to go to the cinema by myself on Christmas Eve to watch the movie Cats. There were 2 other people in the cinema at the time that I went, and even that was too many for the experience that I had. I don't understand what Jennifer Hudson believes any of us poor souls who saw this movie misunderstood about James Corden's insufferable turn as, I believe his character's name is Buster for Jones.
Yeah.
James Corden, awful in everything. Possibly the worst performance I've ever seen from him, and that is saying something. That
is saying something.
He has a Hall of Fame worthy career in terms of shit performances. He really does.
Yeah, raspberry worthy.
Yeah, well, sure, yeah.
Razzies.
Razzie worthy. Or indeed, Ian McKellen making me feel very uncomfortable. A human-sized cat version of Ian McKellen just licking milk from a giant saucer. The man is a knight, and I didn't enjoy that at all. Or Jason Derulo's Rum Tum Tugger, rolling back the years to remind everyone who he is. It's not a complicated movie. It is a nightmarish movie, and one that I never hope to see again.
Well, here's just hoping that Idris Elba's second turn as a cuddly young friend in Sonic 2 will be better than his turn in this.
I'd actually forgotten. I'd bleached that from my memory that Idris Elba was in that movie, to be honest. And now it's back. Now you've put that image of Idris Elba playing the bad guy in my head.
Okay, so the guy who made this film, what's his name? Tom Hooper.
Tom
right?
Hooper, yeah.
Tom Hooper
hot
made
off of Les Mis and the King's Speech. That was what he was coming off of.
Yeah, so he did the King's Speech, then he did Les Mis, and obviously Les Mis is a musical, okay? But let's just think about this. Les Mis, especially the way he did it like he let the actors sing on set live. He let them dictate the pace of the music.
Yep.
He also did it in a way which was very realistic, very gritty, way close up to people's faces. In that film, it's literally, I think 90% of the film is just a close up on people's faces.
A lot of it,
he did that, and then he did that film. It was okay, nowhere near, like it was like maybe a 6 out of 10 compared to the actual stage show. But Hollywood, or the UK version, was just like, you know what, Tom Hooper, you're the musicals guy now. You showed us enough in Les Mis that you could do Cats. Yeah. And I'm just looking at Cats thinking, this is a man who just thought he was the king of musicals and just let it go to his head, and it's just, what has he done, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a staggeringly bad movie, and it's not even actually, like, it starts off really weirdly. But I mean, it's important to kind of separate out the weirdness of the Cats story itself from what Tom Hooper did with it. And I think there is definitely, characters being called Buster Jones, that's just ridiculous, and we can all laugh at that. But like the actual kind of like just storytelling is so bad in this movie. They're just like it's messy, and it's paced poorly, and none of the characters are likable, and it's unclear whose side you're really supposed to be on. And it's so ill-conceived from start to finish, and I didn't appreciate Jennifer Hudson bringing up the memories of this, to be honest.
Memory? The thing is, I do not... That's actually on point with our main feature today on the podcast, the fact that memory's haunting us on this one. But I would say that I personally think that I haven't been to Cats, the live show, and I wouldn't, because I am deathly afraid of audience interaction in anything.
I've got a story about that.
The idea of a cat coming up and rubbing itself on me, I really, really can't even handle the idea of that.
Yeah.
But so if I went, I'd sit right in the middle, you know what I mean? But I think that the sort of uncomfortableness of that, and sort of people are not really paying attention to what's going on, they're just listening to some of the songs. I don't think that you can translate that to a film. Do you know what I mean?
No, I don't think so either. And to be honest, I have a weird relationship with musicals. I think this is maybe just me being very, very kind of like edgy and grumpy when I was 14, but my grandma at the time took me to watch Joseph and his amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and there's a bit at the end where Joseph basically says, "Get up on your feet and clap your hands," and gets everyone involved. And me, with black nail varnish on, wearing probably some kind of like Limp Bizkit or Slipknot hoodie, was the only person who refused to do it. I sat down and did not clap.
I would have loved you there in your black nail varnish, black Slipknot hoodie. I would have loved if you're like, get up, and you just went, "Bring me my comic."
Yeah. That was the moment where I realised I was a musical theatre kid after all. Yeah. Like I'd been misled down this path of metal, and that was actually what I wanted out of life. I mean, I did eventually come to that realisation. It was just about 20 years later. But yes, so that's Cats. Don't go and see it. Don't listen to Jennifer Hudson. It's a bad movie. Please don't watch it. we're going to rapidly shift gears now into something that is good and you should watch or indeed listen to, as is the case with it. Or I guess you could be watching. Lots of people watch this podcast, but you might be listening as well. And that is the exciting game show segment. It's your favourite and mine. It is, once again, Back to the Feature! Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Anthony,
Yes.
how you fit? You got a 0-pointer.
Yeah.
Last week.
I've technically got 2 0-pointers in Back to the Future in a row.
Yes.
Back to the Future. So we'll see how it goes. I'm not filled with confidence. The fact that this is a foreign language film.
I've stitched you up a little bit with this one, to be honest. I had this one earmarked as a. I'll be very surprised if I'll be surprised if anyone gets this, to be honest, because you'll know by the second clue how many people saw this movie. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, the thing is about it, Konrad, I will say to you, is that even if it's one that I definitely won't get, I like the process of guessing, but also I think that it's sometimes it's better than I don't get it, because it means that the listeners can actually do the game the whole way through.
Yes, that's true as well. Yeah, because otherwise we ruin the game for them. In many ways, it's selfish of you to get it right. For those of you who have not listened to this before, this is the exciting game show segment where I have selected a feature film from 25 years ago today. Anthony will hear 5 clues and have 5 opportunities to guess the name of the film. Each clue he hears will lower his score by 1. And we, of course, always encourage you to play along at home. Anthony, are you ready for Back to the Future?
Born ready.
I was born ready. What is that from? I always say that, and I don't know what it's a quote from.
I don't in that voice. I don't know. Born, but the idea of being born ready is just a saying that I know. Maybe it's from a film in particular where it started, but
it's probably one of those things that's just a popular saying, but I've only heard it in one place because I'm sheltered. Okay, here we go. Clue the first. This is considered by many to be the first Danish language gangster film.
Okay, Danish. Not gonna get it. I don't believe. I've seen a few Danish TV series, but I've not ever seen a Danish film.
You have? I think you have.
Have I?
Well, you'll correct me when we'll come back to that on the third clue. Is all I'll say for now.
Oh yeah, maybe I have. Okay. I'm gonna say a TV show that I know. The Killing.
No, it is not The Killing. That is a television show. Not the right medium. But a good guess, nonetheless. You're in the right country, I think. I can't actually remember what The Killing was.
I seem to remember that as being Danish originally, yes.
I think it might be The Bridge that's a joint Swedish and Danish production.
Yeah, because in the American remake, it's in Washington State adjoining Canada and America.
Oh, okay. Very clever. Okay, second clue. Despite making only $4,440 at the box office due to its obscurity and limited release, this was considered an enormous critical success.
$4,000?
Yep. That should tell you how many people saw this movie in the cinema. It had a very limited
no
release.
more than 500 is what the answer is there.
Yeah. I think it's one of those films that probably had like 5 showings nationwide and was more something that people caught on film festivals and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like it only had a limited release. Am I going to know the name of this when you reveal it? Like,
you might. It's a very.
It's been remade, has it?
I don't think it's been remade. It is. I think it's quite a famous movie. It's one of those movies that pops up in a lot of kind of critics' top 500 movies of all time kind of things.
Right. Okay. Well, I don't know it yet, so
okay.
Let's go for Swedish film.
They're all the same. They're all the same, aren't they? That's what
Go
I'm
with the Dragon Tattoo.
Nice. Is that Swedish? I've never seen that, to be honest.
The original is, I think.
Okay. No, it is not The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, but you're in the right neck of the woods at the very least, which is all we can ask for at this point. Clue the third. This is the directorial debut for Nicholas Winding Refn, who also directed Drive, Bronson, and the movie I think you've seen, which I would class as a Danish movie, Valhalla Rising.
As soon as you said Winding Refn, I was going to guess Valhalla Rising.
It is not. It's not any of those 3 films. I'll tell you that right now.
This is far too early 96 is far too early, but I'm just going to guess. Let the Right One In?
It's not a bad. I mean, it's not a bad guess.
It might be Swedish, is it?
That is Swedish. But it's you
I think that was in 2000s at some point.
Yeah, that was early 2000s. I think it was like 2003. I think that movie came out.
Yeah.
Okay, fourth clue. We're getting into the pressure cooker situation now, where the points are getting low. I don't think this is going to help you, but we'll see. This started off as a 5-minute short before being turned into a feature-length story about low-level drug dealers in Copenhagen.
Whenever I originally saw Drive, I went and looked up, as I usually do when I see a film I kind of like, the director.
Yeah.
And I remember at that time he only had like 4 or 5 things on his IMDb.
Yeah.
So it's the name of this film is definitely going to stick out to me when you say it now. Having said that, I just don't know it.
Yeah.
Copenhagen 45, random number.
Imagine if it was Copenhagen and then a different number. You were so close. It is not Copenhagen 45, but someone should make that movie. Nicholas, get on it. Final clue. We'll see if it helps. I don't think you've seen it, but we'll see. This was also the feature debut for Mads Mikkelsen, a role he would return to for one of the 2 sequels to this movie.
Okay, I think I know it, but I don't know the name of it. Is this the movie where it's about a school, and it's about like students? There's something. Maybe it's a different film I'm thinking of.
I'm trying to think what you're thinking of. That might be La Haine you're thinking of there, which is like a French movie about school kids who find a gun.
That might be it. Yeah,
but it's a very similar time and very similar kind of style of movie, actually.
Mads Mikkelsen has played a teacher in something Danish before. I think he has.
Well, I mean, he played a Danish teacher in Another Round out this year.
Oh well, maybe that's why it's in my mind.
Yeah,
that's maybe why it's in my mind. Okay. Jeez, I don't know. Equinox, pretty good series.
It's not Equinox. It's a good guess. And if you're listening at home thinking that Anthony, he's an idiot. He doesn't know anything.
Equinox is Danish.
Anthony's been knocking around the right part of the world and the right time period, and this is a hard one. If I hadn't seen this, I would have no idea what this is. It is the 1996 gritty crime drama Pusher about drug dealers who they basically get screwed over, a deal goes wrong, and they have to try and find the money to pay back the drug dealer. And it's a Danish gangster film. It's very good, but it's one of those movies that if you've seen it, you probably like it, but very few people have actually seen it.
I kind of feel at this stage, Konrad, you very much are trying to catch out the audience, not as well just me. I do remember. I think maybe I do remember actually this film. I haven't seen it, but I do remember like sort of watching the trailer for it and thinking about watching it. And maybe the reason why it didn't stick in my mind is because it's an English name of the film. Maybe that's why it didn't stick in my mind.
I'm just looking now because I want to see. Hold on, where's my folder? This is happening live, folks. We're doing this live. This is all staying in. So
that's 3 zeros in a row for me.
There were on this week in August. There were 2 movies that made over $20 million. I went for the one that made $4,440.
Right. Give me one clue on each of the other ones.
Oh, gee. Okay. Well, the first one is a sequel to the movie that Brandon Lee died on the set of.
Oh my god! How can I not remember this? It was the Crow, the Crow 2.
It is the Crow. Well, the Crow City of Angels is the name. Name of it. I don't know this other one. This other one's called First Kid, which made $26 million. I have no idea what that movie is.
Well, I've got a bit of pride back with the Crow, haven't I? Got a bit of pride.
There you go. You've done well. No, I didn't go for that because I was like, there's no way Anthony's seen the Crow. I rate your opinion on films too highly to.
I wouldn't have got. I haven't seen The Crow, to be honest with you, and I would not have got the actual title of that properly. You know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have known. I would have been like saying The Crow Returns, The Crow 2, The Crow, The Squeakquel. You know.
Yeah, that would have been great. We'd have got there eventually, or would have just had a conversation about Sting. The road not taken. But that is.
Hang on. Let's have a conversation about Sting because I've got something to say about that.
Go on.
Sting What's the saying where you say like he went back for seconds when he shouldn't have? It's like he dipped the biscuit one too many times. I don't know. I'm making up my own sayings.
Yeah, that is not a real saying that you've just made up
he
there.
dipped the biscuit one too many times.
Yeah,
Sting, because you can imagine whenever he did. So Sting the wrestler, I'm sure a lot of people who aren't even wrestling fans remember Sting from the 90s, right? He had he had the crow makeup on. He took the gimmick of the crow from the film.
This is just to be clear as well to anyone who has no clue. This isn't the bass player from the Police that we're talking about here.
No, it's not. This is not that Sting. But this Sting, he took the gimmick of the crow from that film, right? And then he thought, oh my god, that worked. How did that work? That was amazing. And then after The Dark Knight came out, he attempted to take the gimmick of the Joker.
Yeah.
Because he thought he could do it twice, and he couldn't.
Yeah, the Joker Sting was about as awkward as you would imagine a man in his 50s kind of putting on Joker makeup and essentially going, "Why so serious?" It didn't work. No one's ever been able to do that apart from Heath Ledger, and Sting most of all. Wasn't a good look.
There's nothing wrong with passion. Sometimes passion leads to good things, but sometimes it leads to M. Night Shyamalan's version of The Last Airbender, and sometimes it leads to Sting's version of the Joker.
Well, yes, that's
still better than Jared Leto.
Yeah, that's true. Solidly above Jared Leto in the pantheon of Jokers. Someone linked me a model of what's his face? Joaquin? That's how I was about to pronounce that. Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, but rather than a full-sized human man, it's a baby. And I was thinking about buying it, but I didn't do that yet. So,
Leaf. We'll call him Leaf Phoenix. That's what he goes by.
Is that his child's name?
No. His name is Leaf Phoenix.
Is it?
Because all of his family are like, there's River Phoenix, there's Sky Phoenix, maybe not Sky, but there's every one of his siblings are named after, obviously River's passed away, but are named after like things in nature.
Oh, okay.
Whereas he was called Joaquin, so then in his family they call him Leaf.
Oh, okay. I never knew that. There you go. I've learned something about the Phoenix household there.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Okay, well, I mean, speaking of Sting's vanity projects as he tries to recreate the Joker, we've got, I guess, it's not really fair to call this a vanity project, but it is written and directed by the same person, which is about as close as we're going to get to a segue into a vanity project. For those of you who don't know, Anthony and I also do another podcast called the After Dark podcast, where Anthony takes me by the hand through a TV series that he's already seen, and at the moment we're doing Westworld, and this it's as if by fate the Lisa Joy has made her feature debut as a director and as a writer while we're doing Westworld. The movie that we are going to be talking about this week is new in cinemas as of this week, I think. It is Reminiscence, the neo-noirish thriller from Lisa Joy. Reminiscence, yes. So,
no spoilers to begin with.
We're not going to talk spoilers. We'll warn you when we start talking spoilers. Although the first thing I am going to say is, could bearing in mind that a certain character turns up within 5 minutes of this movie starting, could you tell that there was a Westworld connection in the casting in this one, Anthony?
Yes, I could. Funny enough.
I don't think it's a spoiler to say Angela Sarafian, aka Clementine, turns up pretty early in this movie, and it's like, oh yeah, she's from Westworld as well.
Yeah, and Tandy Wayne Newton as well.
Well, obviously Tandy Wayne Newton, yeah, and Ramin Djawadi did the score, so it's sort of like it's a bit of a greatest hits of Westworld, really.
Okay, so let me say this. Basically, the setup is that they are in a sort of post-climate, post-global warming future, where Miami is flooded. I don't want to say post-apocalyptic because it's not really that. I suppose it is.
It's like sort of semi-apocalyptic dystopia. It's like things haven't gone completely fucked yet, but they're well on the way to being so.
Yeah, and Hugh Jackman plays a character called Nick Bannister.
Yep.
And he is a dream seer, or whatever you call him. People come and sit in a tank for him, and he can look at their not dreams, sorry. He can look at their memories, basically. He can see the memories, and this leads him down a path of getting to know this woman, played by what's her name, Rebecca Ferguson, who, interestingly enough, Konrad, and I wanted to go into this a little later, but we've mentioned her now. What do you think about the casting of Rebecca Ferguson here? because she obviously played opposite Hugh Jackman in The Greatest Showman as well.
Yes.
And this is the second film where Hugh Jackman is enamored with her singing in a scene at the beginning of their relationship. And I just thought to myself, there's 2 points on this relationship. And we'll get into the overall thing after this, but this is something that was on my mind. I don't want to forget to say it. This casting, if I want to give Lisa Joy real big props, like if I want to give her a real big credit here, I'm just going to preface this by saying these 2 points I do not believe are true. But if I was going to give her the credit, I would say in a film about memory, it really works to have these two characters in roles that are similar to what we've seen before. That, so the idea is like I was naturally remembering The Greatest Showman while watching this, so it plays on memory.
It does. That's true. I don't know how many I don't know what the kind of Venn diagram crossover between The Greatest Showman and Reminiscence is exactly, but there's probably a couple.
At least
there.
me.
Yeah, you're in the middle there.
Yeah, I'm in the middle. So, but the second thing is, now this is really going off the deep end in terms of the casting choice, right? On. But I'll give Lisa Joy this credit. See, but this is obviously really noir. It's like they took a film and just dunked it in like noir sauce.
Yes,
like that is this film is trying its hardest to be a noir, and that reminded me of Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall, right? Bogey and Bacall, from all their different their noirs from back in the day. And I thought to myself, well, they've cast two leading actors here, Rebecca Ferguson and Jack Human, who have been in a film together before.
Yes.
And maybe they're trying to draw on this idea that they're the new Bogey and Bacall. You know what I mean?
I mean, there's definitely, I think there's a chemistry between them. I think that's definitely clear from the way they interact with each other. I also think Rebecca Ferguson is a fantastic actress, and I really enjoy her in most stuff. And I think Hugh Jackman is one of those actors who can rub me the wrong way sometimes because he's a little clean cut for my tastes. But I think he does a decent job here. Also interesting, talking about castings popping up from other movies. Cliff Curtis and Rebecca Ferguson were both in Dr. Sleep as well. So maybe this is all happening in a projection inside Danny Torrance's mind. Who knows?
Maybe.
Okay, so but I think the first thing we really have to stop on here, because it's one of the things that I think this movie does really well, is the depiction of the world. You have mentioned it already, but I think this idea that the world, like global warming, has progressed to a point where everything's partially flooded and there are these kind of like temporary barriers up around the city of Miami, or in fact it's implied most coastal cities in America are in a similar state, where they've got these like leaking barriers on the outside that are eventually going to fall in, and society around these outskirts has fallen into disrepair, and the rich have essentially formed these islands for themselves with these enormous trenches around them. They're like land barons basically that have snatched up all the prime real estate and don't have to suffer from the effects of the flooding, and the global warming has caused the days to become so hot that everything now happens at night time, and daytime is essentially for sleeping. And it's a really, I think, apart from one thing, which is really nitpicky of me, but I'm going to mention it because it stood out to me, and I had to kind of break myself out of thinking about it. But they're really committed to the bit of they're really committed to this idea of the worlds they've created, and I think I'm going to mention the thing in a second, but noir is all about expressionistic lighting. It's about shadow. A lot of things happen at night in film noir. Because that's just like how it's atmospheric to do that, and this movie doesn't do that, because a lot of what is happening at night is actually happening during the daytime because of this kind of time switch they've done. And in a way, it reminded me, and it's a movie I'm going to come back to again and again. It reminded me of Chinatown, the Roman Polanski, Jack Nicholson neo-noir, although that was a much earlier neo-noir in the early 70s, because a lot of that happens in the day as well. But I think the way they realize their world and the way they depict it is really striking to me, and it really resonated with me, even though it's not. I think would you say it's fair to say it's not really plot critical to anything? The fact that the world is kind of all flooded doesn't really come up in any properly meaningful way.
It doesn't really. I know what you mean. Like Maybe someone could tell us in the comments if it does. I can't remember a time it does. It does seem like it's just a cool setting.
Yeah, I think that is what it is, but it is a really cool setting. Now, the thing that I was going to bring up, and you can tell me if I'm being a nitpicker here, Anthony, but society has let's get the facts straight, all right? Society has changed to function mainly at night because in the day it's too hot for people to go out. We're all agreed on that, right?
Yeah.
Rebecca Ferguson's character is a jazz singer who works in a bar. So why is she singing in a bar at nighttime when everyone else would be at work? That's the thing that really bugged me. And
you are exactly right.
And as soon as that happened, I was like, you took this conceit and you were like, no, we're going to shoot everything at daytime because that's the nighttime of this movie. But they couldn't let go of the nighttime jazz club sequence. They're like, we got to have it at night. And I was just there like, what, she's singing in the jazz club in the middle of the day? Like, no one's going to be there. Everyone's working.
That is brilliant, Konrad. Well done. That was Anthony level pedantic crap.
I couldn't let it go. The first half hour of the movie, it was going through my head like, when are they going to explain why she's singing in the day? It's unrelated.
It should be happening during the day, yeah, and she should be, yeah, because
everything else
was leaving work. She dropped her earring. Her keys, sorry. She was leaving work, which was at the end of the night.
Yeah.
To go home to sleep during the day.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
I could not let that go. I was just like...
So if you want to be a frequenter of jazz clubs, you have to have no job.
Yeah, you have to be unemployed, basically, to go to jazz clubs. I couldn't let it go. I was all over that. So, I mean... that is me being very pedantic though. I'll hold my hand up and be like, most of their commitment to, their altered chronology did make sense. Now, I don't think we're going to talk spoilers just yet, but I wanted to just mention this now, and I think we'll come back to it later. The plot of this movie, without getting into specifics of it, did you find it maybe a little overcomplicated for its own good?
I followed everything pretty well, to be honest with you. I didn't find it wasn't a simple movie. I think they were trying to be very complicated. And I think maybe that's why it appeared more complicated than it actually is, because they're trying to make this like Inception. That's what I felt. They're trying to make this like even the way Hugh Jackman's voiceover. Like I swear to God,
don't get me started on that voiceover.
I was laughing from the get-go.
It's like parody level, that voiceover. It's just like, memories of beads on the necklace of time. It's like, all right, okay, I get it, yeah.
It also didn't fit like the score that was happening at the time.
No.
And the tone of his voice wasn't at the right pitch for what was happening in the score. And I just really felt like it was almost as if like when they turn on the microphone, you could kind of hear the bit of noise coming in and then he starts talking.
It's the voiceover to me reminded me of the theatrical release of Blade Runner, where it was added by the studio after the fact because they thought that the film needed a bunch of exposition to make it make sense. And I'm not saying this movie would have made sense without it. I wasn't following it that closely.
It was written like as a noir. They needed it, you know.
Yeah,
what I mean?
But it was really hammy, that dialogue, and I don't want to. I'll say this now because I'll come back to it later. I don't want to like hammer this film because there were some things about this movie that I did really like, but the Hugh Jackman's narration was I was like rolling my eyes every time it happened. And his
accent as well. His American accent's passable, but when you put it front and center over like a lovely shots of a city or whatever, if you put it over the top of that and you need it to be something grand, it is just not grand. It's just not that.
No.
It's just not. He's not the guy to get for that, you know.
No, and I've had like proper Baader-Meinhof complex for the expression purple prose this week. So it's not something I'd ever come across before, which is just me being ignorant apparently. But it's basically an expression that means like overly ornate dialogue that kind of draws attention to itself, and that is exactly what a lot of his dialogue in this film is. It's kind of these really, really like drawn out metaphors that don't need to be as kind of exaggerated as they are. And I think, as I said, we'll come back to it once we get into spoilers, which I don't think is too far away. But what I meant really by the plot kind of being too complicated for its own good, I think, is that it's not that it's hard to follow. It's that I think the movie starts to trip itself up and it has to like rush to explain certain things, particularly in its second and third acts. that it could have just done very well without, and maybe spent a bit more time with the few characters it actually needed to have to tell the story it wanted to tell. Which, yeah, we'll come back to when we get into spoilers. Was there anything else that you really wanted to say in the non-spoilery stuff?
I think so. This is strange because it is non-spoilery for Reminiscence, I think, but it's on the line of spoilery for Westworld, interestingly enough. But okay. I think you know enough about Westworld that it won't be spoilery for you. I honestly, having seen all of Westworld and where they go with it, and I think when you've seen the end of season 3 of Westworld, you'll think the same. Not in any sort of exact story way, but just this film is very clear, and no one will ever convince me otherwise. This is the stuff that was left on the floor of the writer's room of Westworld. This really, really felt to me like this was the world that they envisaged outside of Westworld. And maybe I'm not going to tell you which direction they go in or whether they even leave the park, but this really feels like they came up with an idea for a future, and then they decided not to use it. And then so they made a film about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's interesting because there are definitely similar themes. Certainly, I think the memory machine that Hugh Jackman's character employs and that we see is pretty widely used by the DA's office, and I can't actually remember the name, but there's like some corporation with these like pods that offer the same kind of experience.
Yeah.
But Lisa Joy does have a lot of fun with that memory machine and how she uses it narratively to kind of pull the rug out from under the audience numerous times. And it does remind me of what we've just seen in lots of Westworld, actually, with the particularly with Bernard, like him dipping in and out of dreams, and the way they structure those to kind of keep the audience guessing as to where they actually are. We do see a bit of that in this. It's not quite as well paced as it is in Westworld, I think, but it's still definitely there. And the world definitely seems like it would have fit into Westworld as well, the world outside of Westworld.
Yeah, I think the world, they did a good job of it, but I think like the actual imagery of the world and like the concept of the world was great. I think it didn't really hold up if you go into like the level of world building that say Blade Runner did. I don't think they didn't really go to the lengths that I would expect of a big budget Hollywood film in terms of the details and stuff. But I did like the world. I thought it looked nice. I enjoyed being in it. I just think there was a lot of issues, and I think that without going into spoilers, I will talk about spoilers about this in a minute. But the way that all came to be in the end, and I've said this, usually, like, guys, when you listen to this podcast, you'll know that I am always saying this, and maybe it's just my own fault the way I view films. But what actually eventually happened was signposted so obviously. That I as soon as it happened, I burst out laughing. I was like, have we really just watched an hour where the solution is what I thought as soon as I saw that on the screen, you know?
Yeah, I think we'll come to the ending in a second. So I think we'll probably say, unless there's anything else that you really want to get into, that we can start talking spoilers now. So if you haven't yet watched Reminiscence, or if you're planning on seeing it, skip forward to our final thoughts on this, because we're going to talk spoilers. So I think the first thing I wanted to talk about with you is that their plot. All movies have them. This one's got one as well, but it's a bad one, I think, for the most part. So when I mentioned the plot problems before, I'm just going to briefly run through the kind of the bullet points of the plot as they pertain to May, Rebecca Ferguson's character. So May is coerced into helping a crooked cop steal memories from Nick of a mistress of a land baron who had a child with him, because the son of the baron wanted the bastard son, the child born out of wedlock with the mistress, killed to retain his inheritance. Then May saves the child, stashes them in a house off the coast somewhere that she knows from her drug addict days, and then sacrifices herself. And when it got to I'm going to say the final 40 minutes of the movie, and it starts racing through this to explain what is, I mean, it's not complicated, but there's a lot of points in that. And I was just like, I'm going to go back to Chinatown again here. So the plot of Chinatown is essentially that Jack Nicholson's character is hired to find the daughter of a very wealthy man who is basically siphoning up all the water in California to his own land and is a real piece of shit. And it turns out that her relationship with him has soured, and things go badly for everyone involved because it's a noir. And I was just like, why have the son? Like, why have the wife with the memory, the mother with the memory issues? Why have, like, you can have the cookie cop or whatever, but I feel like this movie would have been exactly the same movie if they just cut out all of that and was like, the land baron is a bad guy who wants to get rid of a child born out of wedlock from an affair that's an embarrassment. And if you'd have done that, you could have actually spent some time getting a proper villain, because I think that's something this movie was massively missing. There's John Huston, I can never remember how his name is pronounced, Huston or Houston, in Chinatown, is such a brilliant villain because it's simple. He's a guy who wants to get this girl back, and it's implied that he's abusing her. In this, we're really lacking a good villain until Cliff Curtis shows up in the final half hour of the movie.
Yeah, personally, Cliff Curtis did okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's not amazing.
I'll always remember him as Tick Tick in 10,000 BC, of course. He'll always be beloved to me because of the film Whale Rider, let's be honest. But to be honest with you, like he did an okay job. I don't think it was necessary for him at all to be a crooked cop. Like that was nothing. Like that was nothing to that.
Yeah.
He just had to be a heavy. Like that's all he had to be.
I think they made him a cop so they could have that one line of exposition where they're like, let's go to New Orleans and find who this guy is in the database, which is just, it's not necessary.
Yeah. It's maybe as well because like noir, like the idea of a crooked cop. I could even see them just being like, I've seen a noir with a crooked cop. Let's put it in.
We've got to have the crooked cop in there. That's an important trope to hit.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like even the idea of like the inheritance being the main thing, isn't that Inception as well? Like it really felt like this was like a great film. Doesn't show its references, like it doesn't show its inspiration, but it sort of takes on its inspiration and becomes its own thing. I couldn't see anything but what was inspiring this film when I was watching it.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Which is an issue, which obviously is a big issue. They of course wanted to do all sorts of things that were similar to Westworld again, like the idea of the woman repeating the same thing over and over again. Yeah. The idea that what do you call him? Hugh Jackman went into the 3D machine and pushed away these bead things and was like being there with it. So like there was cool imagery in the film, but I do agree with you. I personally am not a fan of a character being revealed to be this double-crossing bad guy, and then it's all right because she doesn't want to kill a kid. It's like there's a line between. There's gray areas in terms of bad guys and stuff, and she double crossed him and he didn't care. There was like 2 minutes of the film where he like the will they won't they won't, there was like 2 minutes and then all of a sudden like he found out that she was like, oh my god, he turned back to me. It's like, what? Even wrestling fans know you don't turn someone that many times. You know what I mean?
No, I'm a bit of a softie, and even in my noir, I don't mind a bit of sentimentality. And the scene at the end of this where May is speaking to Nick through a conversation she is having with Cliff Curtis's crooked cop, knowing that he will figure it out and find this memory and experience it. Even though it's a little bit convenient, to be honest, I didn't mind that too much. There is some stuff in the ending, though, that I really, really didn't like. Just before we get there, the one thing I wanted to focus on was just to really hammer it home is that the inheritance thing, the son doesn't have like a line until the end of the movie. It's like, how is this your villain? He doesn't do anything. And although I didn't like the Westworld-esque kind of subplot of the wife kind of repeating the same loop in the clock shop, that was one of the sadder and more emotional subplots in the movie, I thought. One other thing I did actually want to mention before we get into kind of the ending of this was the scene where she goes to where Nick goes to New Orleans to meet Saint Joe. What did you think of Daniel Wu's performance of that? Because I kind of loved that guy, to be honest.
Yeah, that was actually one of those. That was like if Canto Bight was a great part of The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
Like, this is like another world of this film where for 10 minutes it was a different thing.
Yeah, it became an action movie for like 10 minutes, and there's like loads of slow motion.
Yeah. I think like that was really cool. I like that.
Yeah, I was let's make this the movie
all,
now, please.
Yeah, all it was missing that in the fish tank, it should have been an octopus, and it should have been grabbed onto his face.
Oh.
That would have. That's all that scene
The
was
road
missing.
not taken. Then he sees Brit Marling. Did you? There was one other kind of gaff that I noticed. I normally don't notice these things at all, but clearly the Rebecca Ferguson singing in a jazz club in the middle of the day, i.e. at night, in this had me on edge. When Thandie Newton, her character's name is Emily, when she runs in to save Nick in New Orleans, he gets in trouble with this gangster called St. Joe. First off, she has the most powerful double-barreled shotgun in the world, because when she fires it, it turns into like a fucking Robert Rodriguez movie for a second. Like, he flies literally like 20 feet across the room, which I shouldn't have to explain the physics of that to explain why it doesn't work. But then as she's running into the room, she goes to like toss the sort of shotgun aside as she's drawing a pistol, and there's an extra running literally right next to her, and as she tosses it, it just hits the extra in the face and then falls down to the floor. And I could not stop laughing throughout the entire scene.
You noticed that on the first watch.
I noticed that in the cinema. I was like, she just hit that extra with the shotgun. It was great.
That is fantastic.
I was keyed in. I was keyed into every little thing this movie was doing wrong by that point.
I just want to say one thing, Conrad, just before we sort of properly talk about the ending, maybe, or like how we want to go. Okay, so the reason why, I suppose, I was reflecting there while you were speaking about the turning on a dime because of the kid, right?
Yeah.
Like, so May turned on a dime because she didn't want the kid to die.
Yeah.
I suppose why I didn't like it is because if the kid wasn't going to get killed, she never would have come back to Hugh Jackman again, right? Like, so I know that she originally tried to go there or whatever, but I think the thing that changed her mind about like the crime, or about like, you know, the path she was on, properly changed her mind about just like saying fuck it, you know, I'm not doing this anymore, was the kid going to get killed. It had nothing to do with Hugh Jackman. I think what you would have needed to do was have like Hugh Jackman in peril. I think that it makes sense for a human being not want to have a child to die, but I just think that having that, like, for me, I put myself in Hugh Jackman's shoes. I wouldn't be all of a sudden okay with it. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be all of a sudden like, that's fine. You know, that's all right then. So that's what my issue.
I do know what you mean. I know what you mean. I think the relationship between Nick and May relies a whole lot on the chemistry between Hugh Jackman and Rebecca Ferguson, because there's not a lot on the page to really explain to you why Hugh Jackman loves her as much as he does, or why he's willing to forgive the things that he does, because what she does to him is horrible. And although there are, you know, there's some little hints as to... It's funny, Hugh Jackman's character, talking about Westworld comparisons, Hugh Jackman's character in this really reminded me of like your Teddies in Westworld, where it's just, he's got this dark past where he was in the war, and it's like, are you ever gonna expand on that past to maybe explain why he feels or acts the way he does? I was like, nah, don't worry about it. It's not like it's not important. And none of the fact you get none of that makes the connection that those two characters have feel a little bit hollow. I think I do agree with you there. And then obviously the character turns that come as part of that relationship feel equally hollow, I think. Yeah.
Well, I did turn to my wife. I got two good laughs during the film.
Oh, great!
Turned to Emer, and I just randomly said Jack Human. That got a laugh. And then
always a banker. That one.
Yeah. I also got a laugh whenever, I can't remember exactly how I worded it, so I'm gonna screw it up now. But like whenever like she didn't come back the first time or whatever, and I just turned to Emer and I said, Jesus Christ, like. Hugh Jackman Hugh Jackman is never enough.
It's a great gag, well delivered, I'm sure. And that should be a sign of how much you were enjoying this movie, that you were making gags to your wife during the performance.
Yeah. Well, I always do that anyway.
That's true.
Have I said that the number one gag in a movie I've ever heard before on the podcast before?
Possibly not. Go on, hit us with it.
Okay. So I went to see a film called Official Secrets. Maybe I have actually said this before. I'm not sure. But I went to see a film called Official Secrets. And it's a Keira Knightley film, a true story about a woman who sort of basically did like an Edward Snowden, right? And she went to court for it. And in the true story, eventually she gets let go, right? She gets, I don't know what the name was, acquitted, right? But there was a guy behind me. First of all, the guy behind me was like a really old man in his like 70s, right?
Yeah.
And he was obviously going to see it because it's like, it's true history, you know? But he also was laughing at certain characters just because they were speaking Arabic and stuff, you know? So it was a bit of a weird situation. Like, I didn't have great feelings towards this man. Yeah. But then he said one of the funniest things I've ever heard in my life.
Go on.
Whenever the judge, there was a moment in the film where the judge is about to give his verdict, right? And all the evidence is, the score is booming, you know, it's like getting ready for the judge to acquit her. And just before the judge speaks, there's silence in the cinema and he just goes, "Free to go."
I love people who do that. Like they like give advice to the actors.
Yeah.
I was watching Little Women in a cinema like a couple of years ago, and at the end of that movie where I can't remember her name, but Saoirse Ronan's character is offered like a shitty deal to give up her book, and a woman sat in front of me, like, you know, the guy offers the shitty deal, and there's a pregnant pause, and the woman in front of me just said, "Don't you do it." And I'm just like, come on, we're watching a movie. She's not listening.
That is brilliant. It's
great.
like being in the living room with your mum.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was like. It's like I was like watching a film with my mum. Okay, well, actually, funnily enough, I had an absolutely hammered man who hadn't paid for a ticket come into the cinema during this film, so that probably impacted my enjoyment of this as well.
Can you remember the experience?
He was getting arrested afterwards, so I'll say he will. There's one thing that I wanted to discuss. I like before we move off of a Reminiscence and give our verdicts. Noir needs. Okay, so I'm gonna be a bit prescriptive here, and I'm gonna be a bit dogmatic. Noir needs to have edges. The whole point of noir as a genre is that things don't end well. They might end okay for some people, but generally speaking, it's a dark, dramatic genre. And the ending of this movie, and I you know, there are bits of the ending that I did like. I enjoyed the sentimentality of the way they kind of revisit Nick and May's relationship. But my God, is the ending of this movie toothless. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Where do you stand on, in voiceover, them implying that society fixes itself as a tossed off-screen resolution?
I mean, it's never good. Like the idea of like, you want your world to feel living and breathing. So it kind of reminds me, you know how we talked about before about how Star Wars, the original 3, were like, it was like a huge universe and you can imagine going anywhere.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like the prequels just like narrow
the focus way down.
It's like, actually, no, it is just these 12 people who are special. So that's kind of like what that's like, you know. It's like you have this huge world where it's like, oh my God, I wonder what New York's like, you know. And then all of a sudden it's just like, and the world was fantastic again.
That's it's not why Blade Runner's good, but the events of Blade Runner changed nothing in that society. It is still the world is the same before and after Rick Deckard finishes retiring all those replicants. Mm-hmm. Yet in this, they couldn't resist. And I wonder if it was Lisa Joy. I wonder if it was maybe studio interference to try and make it have a happier ending. But they couldn't resist in voiceover saying, "Word of the land baron's crimes got out and soon the riots started." And it's just like, you don't have to fix society in the last 5 minutes of your movie. It doesn't need to happen. It's really cheap, and it just really left me with a sour taste in my mouth at the end of this movie.
Well, actually, it's interesting as well because most films end with the main character returning to, you know, the place where they're sort of familiar, and having changed, you know. So at the start of the film, he didn't have May, but he was a particular way. At the end of the film, he should have returned to what he was doing, but be different. Whereas he didn't return to what he was doing. He returned into the tank, and then he was like just living his memories with May. So he actually didn't return to his setting having changed. Yeah. He just continued down the pathway of living in a fantasy.
He went through no development.
Yeah, which is an interesting way to end a film, to be honest with you. And I didn't really feel satisfied walking out. I'll say that.
No, I definitely didn't. Okay, well, so we're gonna try something new here on the Best Movie Podcast Ever, and we haven't got sealed envelopes because this is an audio podcast as well as a video one, so it wouldn't work for us to hold up a pre-written down number or star, indeed. So you're just gonna have to trust us. But Anthony, what would you give this movie out of 5? And remember, half stars are for cowards.
Yeah. So I'm gonna just for the audience listening as well. Every week now, if we do this, when Konrad and I haven't seen the film, we'll do this because the idea is we wrote this down before we started.
Yeah.
So because there's always a chance that we'll convince each other that it's a better film than it actually is, so
or a worse one. Like that jazz singer bit. That's a star off as far as I'm concerned.
So I think we forgot to do it today, but I think next week we maybe will if it's a new film for both of us, we'll mention in the intro, because the people who aren't listening to spoilers now, like this isn't the spoiler part, but maybe they'd like to hear this. So I'll timestamp it and then we'll make sure to mention it from now on. But anyway, my star rating for this, now it's interesting because I was talking to Konrad. I said out of 10, I gave it one thing, but then Konrad said, no, it has to be out of 5. So I actually changed my score, even though it was divisible by 2. Because this is not a 3-star film. I gave it a 2-star.
Okay.
I gave it a 2-star. I had it as a 6 out of 10, which is really weird, isn't it?
That is so funny you said that, because I gave it a 3-star, but I would have had it as a 6 or out of 10 as well. Like 6 or a 7 out of 10. I was like, this is just about a 3-star film, was my thinking. But
I gave it a 2-star. So interestingly, that's actually really cool, because after the conversation now, the audience might be able to be like, whoa, actually, from the conversation, I thought Anthony liked it better than Konrad. And, who knows how it would go. But no, I had 2-star, Konrad had 3-star. Interesting.
The sentimentality of the relationship between the two and the world building were enough to keep me engaged. But I think this movie, if you start picking it apart, the whole thing will fall apart. It's so lightweight. And as we said before, I think I get the impression you agree with me, Anthony. This is not doing anything that hasn't already been done better by other movies. It really isn't.
Yeah, for me, to be honest with you, it all came down to expectation, and that's not just me. It's like if you're making a film about memory and you're advertising it, the idea of like you can get addicted to the past, all this crap. If you're advertising it that way, you have to know that the audience these days, having had so much great stuff in the past about it, are going to be expecting high things. Yeah, and it just didn't live up to it to me. But they were trying the complexity, as we said. It just didn't really work.
Yeah, they were. And Lisa Joy, I hopefully this movie does okay and she gets another crack at it, because there's promising stuff here.
Apparently it's bombed.
Oh, really? Well, I hope she never makes anything ever again and she's driven out of Hollywood. That is going to lead us very naturally, as it always does, to answering one simple question, and that is, Anthony, what's your favourite movie?
My favourite movie is The Boys from County Hell.
I have no idea what that movie is.
That is I went to see it in the cinema last week. It is a Northern Irish-made film.
Oh.
A horror film about vampires. And it was really, really good quality for being Northern Irish locally made. And I really, really enjoyed it.
I'll have to try
highlight for me was whenever they rang up the police, the PSNI, to ask them to go out into the streets and look for a dark figure. They didn't want to say vampire because he wouldn't believe it. So, look for a dark figure with dark skin, and he said, "No, we're a very inclusive town here. I'll have none of that." It was great.
That sounds great. I need to look that up. That's I've not. I don't know if I've ever seen a Northern Irish movie. Or certainly not.
There's only a few like Northern Irish made from Northern Irish talent. Like, there's a lot of films made in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, and about Northern Ireland as well. But
yeah, so this is... yes, exactly. But this is... the reason why I love this film is because... And we're getting a lot of young filmmakers making films in Northern Ireland these days, which are not focusing on the troubles. And that is what I've been calling out for so long. Like, it's all right to make one or two and, like, reflect on the past, but we need to have... Like, Northern Ireland is more than just its troubled past.
You don't want to just be defined by that brief period in your history, as important as it was.
Not so brief, but yes, you don't want to be defined by it.
No, I guess it's not that brief in the grand scheme of things. Okay, my favourite movie is Chinatown. It does pretty much everything that this movie does, but a million times better. Thank you. Thank you to Nancy Wyatt and Jared Iscariot for the use of our theme song. You can find links to their stuff down in the description below. And thank you to you for joining us. Please consider subscribing. We are the best movie podcast ever on podcasting apps, and we're the Culture Cave on YouTube. Please consider getting involved in the comments, letting us know what you've seen, giving the show a like. It does really help. And we will see you same time, same place next week.
And cut.